women and girls are experiencing a significant number of hate speech online, which is just one of the forms of violence against women that we're seeing happening on the digital space. Women and girls are 27 times more likely to experience harassment online than men and boys. So this is a very gendered issue, and it's quite clearly a gendered issue. In terms of the different forms of violence, it really depends on the different type of perpetrators that you have. They can come in many different forms, whether it's directly to your messages, or you can have mob attacks, for example, which many people experience, where they may be engaging in debate and all of a sudden there's a lot of people attacking them all at once, and these are coordinated attacks by specific groups. Just to be clear, that all women and girls, I think, experience this. Over 9 million girls in Europe alone have experienced some form of online violence by the age of the 15, and 1 in 3 women have experienced violence against women in some form in general in Europe. So I think all groups are affected, but one specific group that is affected and that is very relevant are female politicians. And particularly being here in the European Parliament today, it's a very visceral situation, and it's becoming more important on the political agenda. We have quotes from MEPs, female MEPs, who have received 500 rape or death threats per day. We have the only black female MEP in the European Parliament who can't go back to her home country without a bodyguard because those threats are so real. And a further example would be the MP Diane Abbott in the UK, who experienced 36% of all examples of hate speech online during the last election. In terms of migrant and refugee women, I think it's good to make it clear that this is actually part of a much broader anti-migrant narrative that's happening not only in Germany but across Europe that we're seeing. And for women it can be particularly more dangerous because they're not only facing hate speech and being targeted because of their migrant or refugee status, but also because they're women, and also potentially because of race also as well. So this is a very intersectional issue where it affects them on many different particular regions. And I think it should be a priority and accountability of both media and politicians to make sure that they are combating this very, very divisive and destructive narrative. They really should push the message and let the public know that migration is actually a net positive for society and actually contribute to the lessening of hate speech that could potentially lead to hate crimes that we have seen on an increase in Europe. In terms of what migrant women and refugee women can do, again, reach out to any communities, like-minded communities that they have access to the people that they may be in contact with, and to women's organisations who would be happy to support them in any way possible to be protected from any form of violence. We've actually developed 2 projects called Her Net, Her Rights since 2017. This report analyses and maps the prevalence of online violence against women and girls, looking at specific demographics such as politicians, such as young women and girls. And we're also developing trainings for female politicians to be able to help them protect themselves from the online violence that they experience. But for us, it's not just about what we are doing, it's the policy recommendations that we put forward to politicians, but also to tech companies as well, because there has to be a multi-stakeholder cooperation in tackling this specific issue. So to policy recommendations, we would like to see online hate speech and all forms of online violence against women listed as a cybercrime, where in some countries in the EU it's not at the moment. And to tech companies, we would ask them to develop a code of conduct between one another so that they have a set standard in how they actually deal with these issues, both internally and externally. But overall, I would say we would also very much like to see the ratification of the Istanbul Convention by the EU and all EU member states. Germany wonderfully ratified it last year in December, and we would like to make sure that it's the impactful implementation of this, and to acknowledge that online violence and online hate speech is just a form of psychological violence, and it must be included in the existing policies to combat violence against women and girls.